6 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is Saad here in southeast London in Bromley, and right now it's all dark because of the winter that we're in now in December, and it's been mild, I will say, relatively speaking, 20 degrees centigrade, little bit of rain, not right now, but there was earlier in the day. Just checking with Gregory. Are you there, Gregory?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Welcome. Welcome to the show. Please tell us where you are and how is the weather where you are?
In Brussels, just like in London, same weather.
Same weather. Okay, welcome. Welcome to the show. Dear listeners, you're listening to the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And we have a new topic every week. And the topic tonight is salvation redemption. Salvation redemption. And I do want to send the Christmas greetings to everybody. We are now just 10 days away from Christmas Day. Today is the 15th of December and it's 10 days away. And I know a lot of people are in that mood now of celebration. And so, yes, I want to greet you from our show to join in that. So just to remind you, the topic for tonight is salvation redemption. It is connected with Jesus, of course, but it's also a general statement, salvation redemption. So we're going to discuss that tonight. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. You can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail message? The Grail message in the light of truth by Abdushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the readers again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with the matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abdushin. the hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, I want to remind you again, the topic we are discussing tonight is salvation redemption. Salvation redemption. You could say it's in honor of Christmas. We will be celebrating Christmas next week as well. But you could say this is the 2 weeks to go now, so we join in with this topic for tonight. So, you can ask any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. As usual, I looked up the title for the topic tonight. The title is tonight, or topic tonight is Salvation Redemption. And in the dictionary, for looking up the word salvation, this is what I found. It is salvation from Latin, which is salvatio, or from salva, which means safe or saved. And it says this is the state of being saved or protected from harm or a dire situation. In religion or in theology, salvation generally refers to the deliverance of the soul from sin and its consequences. So again, as usual, Gregory, I just would like to ask your, let's say, what that sort of represents. Is that a definition? How good is this definition, let's say, or does it cover what is salvation?
Well, first, thanks for all these questions. There are the definitions that many have from dictionaries, but one would wish to present a scenario. Maybe from that scenario, many will understand what salvation means. And the scenario is such that suppose one lives in a city and wishes to go from one part of the city to another part because there's a particular goal that personality wishes to achieve. If that person hasn't got, say, a map, then the possibility is there that he'll be going around in circles without making any progress. If, however, that person has a map, like we used to call it A to Z, or for instance, Google Map, what one can then do is follow the instructions, follow the advice that Google Map or A to Z, or ask people, and hopefully before too long, that person will arrive at the destination. That means that person has achieved its goal. Without a map, the likelihood is that that person will not get to achieve that particular goal. So if one is to view salvation, that means one is saved because one is striving to achieve a particular goal, or something which is similar, one is in the forest and you want to get out of the forest. Like many will say, the forest of concrete jungle or the forest of trees. And this is a very wide forest. You need to save yourself from the challenges, from the dangers, and therefore the need for an instrument or a map to be able to move from one part to the other and arrive there safely. That is where safety comes in. And that is the picture one will wish to present as salvation.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. I think you've painted you could say, a very clear and brilliant picture there. Giving a context of, how we should look at this salvation, because in a way, there's the word salvation. There are so many questions already from that, like where are you? What are you being saved from? And you gave the picture of it, going A to Z. You said the map, and you need a map for that, obviously, if you don't want to get lost. Then you could go by trial and error, of course, but that's not going to help you too easily. You're going to mess up a lot on the way, and so if you had a map, that would be very much better. So that is definitely good. I would say very, really good. And that word map, in a way, when you think of salvation, you're thinking of something, salvation of the soul, let's say, or the spirit. And it's like sin is the first thing that comes in your head. But you have, let's say, not mentioned that at all. It's more of a journey, A to Z, like you said, so it's a bit of a neutral way, I would say, without going to, talking about that. Just so, can I just ask, actually, you could say this is a slight diversion. So is there, in this map, would you say there's something representing sin that, how would you define sin? Is that part of this definition of salvation?
In considering it very precisely, one should then attach to it, after salvation, then the expression redemption. Sin, or let us say redemption, only comes in when one has violated the directions which are to be followed in that map. It's as if one is now trapped. And because when one is trapped, it's as if one has tied a knot. It therefore means one has to untie the knot. If one is going from one end to another end and makes an error, the the possibility is there that you fall into a ditch. One may refer to that as a knot. And for you to proceed further, you need to get out of that ditch and proceed. Falling into a ditch as such is like one has sinned or has made an error or has violated the rule. The map one is referring to is not a static map, but a dynamic map of life, a set of rules through which the neighborhoods, through which the context came into existence. In striving to understand the framework, which framework forms the map, then one is able to traverse from one place to another, where maybe that of the soul or that of the spirit. The need is there to understand the tool, which tool or which context or which laws form the basis of all existence.
Thank you again, Gregory, for your answer there. And I have, let's say, many things happening in my head about this, and I'm reflecting on the map. And then everybody's familiar of the word map on the earth, and then, but you don't think of it having a map for the soul. You know, the map on the earth, you go to A, you said if you're living in a city, you want to go from A to B within that city. You can easily understand the map there. And then, but you think of the soul or the spirit, and you don't immediately think, oh, I need a map, or there is a map even for that. So let me just, before I ask the next one, I just want to think of the map you're referring to, Gregory. Is that map referring to earthly journeys or also spiritual journeys?
The map one referred to initially is only an earthly representation that one may use when one is taking journeys on the earth plane. One can move further and say there is a dynamic map of laws of creation through which everyone came into existence. It is that particular map, not basically the earthly map. For the earthly map we refer to applies to earthly things. But since the human personality is of spirit, in the same sense, one can refer to a dynamic map, which map one can call the laws of creation, which gives out representation. So one will be able to perceive things which are not physically visible. Of course, it is a dynamic tool which the spirit of man must understand in order to be able to extricate itself whenever it meets with challenges.
Again, thank you, Gregory, for your answer there. I think we're building the picture slowly but surely, gently going forward in this journey with the discussion about the map, because so I'm glad, and like I like to use this phrase, we are going step by step, and I think it's really good to, work like that because it really is something big once you realize what it is. So I think the earthly map is quite easy to see, but also said that map is also for, let's say, the laws. Could you just repeat that part you said about the laws with the map in relation to the map?
One was referring to the dynamic map of which the creation laws are representation. So you want to understand the dynamic map that is being referred to, one needs to use one's intuition. Whereas the map, which many are used to, which is the earthly map, one needs to use the five senses, or basically one is referring to now one's visibility, to be able to move from one point to the other and follow it. That is for the earthly. Just as you have the map, in quotes, being for the earthly, so also in creation, the framework of creation, one may refer to as a map. The representation of this framework, to be very precise, is what one refers to as the laws of creation, through which all that exists in creation came into existence.
Again, thank you for your answer there, Gregory. So I want to explore this map of creation, or map of the creation laws, as you're referring to. And you said, you have made the point that for this map of creation, we need to use our intuition. And that is not an earthly, let's say, ability. So I'm just thinking first, I think I won't talk about the intuition just now. Let's focus more on the laws, these creation laws. So, Gregory, just to be clear, those creation laws, do they work on the earthly as well? Because it seems like we're talking earthly and then there's a creation as well. So just want to understand that properly. So are they also working on the earthly level, these creation laws?
The earth is a part of creation. Therefore, the laws of creation also apply to here on the earth. So one cannot exclude. The example or the analogy one gave of a map here on the earth is only a picture that one may use to understand these analogies. But this time, one needs to broaden it out. For when one is referring to earthly things, you need to have that which is concrete that you can refer to. Otherwise, if it is not concrete, then the elements you are discussing may just be nebulous. You won't understand what is happening. Whereas when one is referring to creation laws, which creation laws, as a very simple example, is when one sows, one needs to reap. Or when one breathes in, one needs to breathe out. That is a creation law, which is also applicable here on earth.
Gregory, let's look at those laws a more further. Like on the earth, we make our, you can say, earthly laws, human laws, and but the laws you're referring to, creation laws, does the human being have some role in that, in those laws? does he activate the laws, those creation laws?
The human spirit came into existence through these creation laws. So in his own personal striving, all he needs to do is to align itself or attune itself to these creation laws such that it's able to move from one point to another such that it will not incur any depth. Therefore, you find that for one to be free from sin, there is the need to understand these creation laws very well, which creation laws were given as an approximation in the so-called 10 Commandments, which were also given through the Lord's Prayer that Christ gave to his disciples at that time.
So just to be clear, so those laws, creation laws, you said they're in the 10 Commandments and also in the 10 Lord's Prayer that Christ gave. Is that limited? Are the creation laws only being expressed in these two places, or is it other places also, other religions or elsewhere? Is it like science? Is it expressed there, these laws?
First, one must understand that science only deals with the world of matter. It does not deal with the world of non-matter. Therefore, it is restricted. Creation laws applies to matter, non-matter. Creation laws also apply to the animistic domain and also the spiritual domain. It applies to all that is in creation, whereas the laws of the earth, which I mentioned most of the time, have a limitation and they don't apply to other areas. It is not the religion per se that counts. Religion, if viewed correctly, is only a channel through which one may understand these laws. If, however, in the process of explanation, one finds that the so-called rules in religion are inconsistent, then they cannot be the laws of creation.
Thank you again, Gregory, for your answer. It's really building a picture, slowly but surely expanding our conceptions of this creation laws and this journey of, you could say, salvation and redemption. We are not, as you say, thinking of it as religion or religious, but just a journey. Even you could just call it, it's just a journey, like you go from A to B from on the earth, on a city, just a journey of life, you can say. So it's very, very, I'm going to say, all-encompassing, and very simple even to think about it like that, rather than coming from a particular angle. Oh, I follow this religion, or I think from this way, and this. So I want to talk about that further. But before I do, I just want to remind our listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio 1, and we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com, and also you can hear, just to remind you, this is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And if you are interested in finding out more about the Grail message or want to get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. So that's grailmessage.com. I'll spell it again, www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we are discussing tonight is salvation, redemption. Is sort of joining in the Christmas spirit. However, as we've been talking in this show, it's not necessarily about Christmas. It's really the journey of life. So salvation, redemption. And if you would like to join us with any question or comments, the number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And I just want to also add that we are broadcasting on blessradio1number1.com, as I said, but also you can listen to us on YouTube live, which is youtube.com, of course. Then you put in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, and then space live stream. That's Bless Radio 1, the number 1, and then space live stream. That's 2 words together, and put it in the search box of YouTube, and you can listen to us live. You can also listen to the recording of this show after basically the next day on YouTube. You go to youtube.com, of course, and then in the search box type in Bless Radio 1, the number 1, and then space Grail message, Grail, and then space message, MESSAGE, and the topic of the show, which tonight is salvation, redemption. Salvation, redemption. So Gregory, I mean, it's very interesting what we've been talking so far, because it's such a broad, this journey that we're talking about is such a broad thing. This map of creation you've talked about, and then in that we have to recognize these creation laws. So, and you have mentioned already that in that we need to use the intuition, and not really the earthly laws, the earthly senses. So I just want to explore that now. And just recapping a little bit more, and it's not something necessarily, it's something religious that we have to sort of discover that way and treat it in that way. It's something just, so what I want to understand, Gregory, this intuition and sensing with our intuition, these creation laws, how do we do that? Is it we go into nature? Because we do, we like to appreciate nature a lot, and that's what seems to attract us, beauty in the world. And so how do we get to know these creation laws?
First, there seem to be many questions embedded in the question you just formulated. What one will refer to in the first instance is intuition, before one goes to discuss the creation laws. All that one sees is an expression of what is happening. Behind what one perceives with one's senses, which are the five senses, for the five senses are tools which one uses for perception of the external things that one sees, and we know there are five senses. When one talks of an expression, then logically there must be an impression. That means when you see beautiful nature, it has an impression within you. That impression, one can now expand it a bit and say, what sort of intuitive impression does it excite within? What lies behind all these things we perceive externally? What sort of intuitive impressions? These are the first questions each person you ask yourself. When one is joyful, it is not the body that, strictly speaking, is joyful. It's as if there is an impression which is generated. When one is sorrowful, the same thing happens. So both joys and sorrows knocks at the human soul, which human soul is not physical. So what one is stressing here is that the five senses are only tools or channels that are able to pass whatever they have received to one's intuition, such that the personality can experience. You cannot say now that, okay, an atom is joyful and has a personality. So what one sees externally, the physical body, has something behind it which one may refer to as that personality that these impressions are passed on to. And these impressions go via the intuition to the human soul, which human soul is only a covering for the human spirit. So with that, one can now take a further step and say, how does it affect? How do these impressions affect? What impact do these impressions have on the human spirit? There are times many a person is joyful, and one cannot argue about that. There are other times many a person is sorrowful. Like one stress, it is the inner personality that is either joyful or sorrowful. And as we well know, we do not have creation in such a way that things happen in an arbitrary manner. For creation that we're referring to came into existence. And creation consists of what we refer to as its constituents. We also know that these constituents of creation, they do interact. After all, look at here on earth. Man breathes in and breathes out. Man eats food to strengthen the physical body. These are all interaction. There is also the interaction with other people. And these interactions are not done in an arbitrary manner. Anything goes. That is not the case. There are strict rules through which creation came into existence. Which one had already mentioned, you will find that whoever breathes in must also breathe out. It's as if whoever receives must also make use of it and pass it on. If one follows very carefully, one will come to the conclusion of a dynamic activity. That dynamic activity of a reciprocity of receiving or of giving and receiving. A dynamic reciprocity, not static, as many will imagine. With that reciprocity, one may now use an expression of reciprocal activity or the law of reciprocity. For this particular feature is always there whenever one is discussing about the constituents of creation, giving and taking. That is why it's called a law, because it's always there and it cannot be changed. One may say, oh, is that true? A very simple experiment is try to breathe in without breathing out. And then one may ask oneself after an hour or two if that law can be violated. So these things have to be observed very carefully. Another aspects of these laws of creation, which one refers to, is that when you observe very carefully, you find that we have an accumulation of similar types. That means noble-minded people, they do come together because they have similar types, they have similar kind. In the accumulation, in the coming together of noble-mindedness, therein lies what one may refer to as an attraction of similar species. So if one views it very carefully, one will find that things have been so very well arranged, but these have to be experienced using one's intuition. Of course, there is a third aspect that can be examined, and which many have already experienced, that when you feel sorrow, it's as if you are sinking. In the case of a very simple example that one may use is that one has just lost somebody through the COVID or one reason or the other, or one has just lost some money, or one has, it's as if you've lost something. You feel, in quotes, depressed. Whereas when you are happy, as you find with most people, when they are dancing, they forget anything which holds them down. So looking at that particular scenario, it's as if there is the gravitation. That which is heavy makes one sink, whereas that which is lighter makes one rise. These impressions are not just there. They form part of the features that ensure that there is dynamic movement in creation in accordance with the personality that has put creation into motion and into being.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Again, you painted a, let's say, a broad picture, comprehensive picture, and you just at the end mentioned that those laws have been put in by a personality, and we have been talking about these creation laws. So there's an inference of there being a creator. So you just referred to that just now. So Gregory, does this mean this journey, because we talked about this map at the beginning of the show, that there is a map, like we know there's an earthly map from going to A to B. There's also this map, you could say, creation map, let's call it like that, with the creation laws in it, working in it. And so my question on that is, I mean, the inference is, Gregory, that are we meant to recognize this map and also in the end the creator of the creation, the creation laws that were placed in this creation? Is that the point of this journey of life?
It is the purpose, or the key purpose, is to understand the operation of this map. If one holds on a bit, one may use, whenever a map is mentioned, one must use the picture of pointers. For if you are to go from one point to another point, you need a pointer which points, all right? You might be varying the points or you might be weaving your way. So the concept of a map gives you one point, another point, and then a pointer. If one holds that concept and knows that one is here on earth, and through the deep longing that each one holds within, that longing of paradise, that longing of beauty, that longing of happiness, those are pointers which point to the region where that can be realized. And therefore, the need is there, just as you will struggle or you will strive to move from one point to another point, knowing that the map is more of a pointer on the direction you should follow. In the same sense, the longing for happiness, the longing for freedom, the longing for beauty is always there for the human personality. That longing, which in order to fulfill it, that longing is the goal that the human personality needs to fulfill. It's as if there is something which is sort of holding it or dragging it to come upwards. That longing, most of the time, does not cease to exist when the physical body is no more. The longing for purity, the longing to be perfect in one's activity is always there. The intense longing for happiness, the intense longing for joy is always there. As we know, or as we are now assume, that the inner core of man sets out from a particular region where joy and happiness is the rule. The longing is more of an attraction, homogeneous types, because the human spirit needs to prepare itself so that it can journey to that goal where pure happiness is fulfilled, where pure joy is fulfilled.
Thank you again for your answer there, Gregory. Somehow, what you're saying is there's things which are naturally built inside us human beings to find, this, you mentioned this longing, happiness, you could say love, freedom, it's sort of built inside us. And then I'm, in the back of my mind, I keep thinking, well, although we have not gone into deeply into it, there are these religious or spiritual teachings which talk about happiness and joy as well, and peace and love. But somehow, from the way you have been talking and sharing, it doesn't seem necessary to know to come across those things. It's somehow built in already within us. This longing you mentioned, longing to, for happiness is already there. It's naturally there. So I'm wondering now, do we need any of such teachings of, let's say, any religion or spiritual teaching at all? I just mentioned this only as one example, like, let's say, teaching of Jesus. It could be any teaching actually that is there, but do we need any of such teachings, or is it all within us to find, let's say, this, find our way?
As one may well realize that these longings, one may refer to some of it as talents which need to be cultivated. And at the beginning, it's as if one already can sense it, but it's not quite clear how to go about to fulfill this. What many a religion had done is, to some extent, depending on its recognition, it presents the way how the human spirit may need to move from the point where it is now to the other point where it senses or it longs to go. When Christ came, that was precisely what he put down with the Lord's Prayer, which is a summary of how the human personality needs to proceed in order to attain supreme happiness or supreme joy, and does not fall in temptation, which temptation one may refer to as tying a knot. And when you are trying to make a journey from one part to the other, and in the course you injure yourself, then it will sort of inhibit your movement as you would have liked to move. However, you will find that in understanding how one needs to proceed aright, in accordance with the laws, with these features in creation, as long as one is able to move in accordance with these features vigorously, then very probably it will arrive at its destination, which destination is referred to as the paradise of man. That is what many a religion, so-called, strives to do. But if you are to examine many religion or many teaching, you find inconsistencies. The patterns and the pointers they have put in place does not allow the human spirit to move up freely. It's as if the personality goes round in circles, like someone who wants to move from one part of the city to another part and keeps going around these different streets but doesn't make any real progress, like one is in the labyrinth. And therefore, that is a proof that the personality is unable to make meaningful progress. If, however, there is a teaching which explains, which enables the personality to move from a point of cognition, looking at all the objects, looking at the processes they have in nature or the processes in creation, and making use of these processes, then the currents, just like the currents of air or the currents of the river, which would have opposed it, these same currents will carry it and it will rise higher and higher. Then it will have pure happiness because it is not oppressed because it has made the right decisions.
Thank you for that, Gregory. Again, a beautiful picture you've painted there. So it's like, yes, the things which are inherent in us, and then there's the pointers, which, let's say, many teachings are there, but, let's say, unless they're let's say, we are able to see at points in these teachings, there may be something not quite correct. That's, if I can say, not to put anything down, but simply, let's say, not in accordance with the laws of, we're calling them creation laws. I think I can refer them also as laws of nature, because we're saying these are natural things. So we can also refer to laws of nature. And if things are not in accordance with the laws of nature, that's how, we came about naturally. So if it can't, I think it was I'm going to make a little bit jovial thing. In Star Trek, Spock said it has to be in the, be in according with the laws of physics. So here we're talking about the laws of nature. So if something's not in line with the laws of nature, then it can't actually happen. So, and if something, even in a teaching, spiritual teaching or religious teaching, says something which is inconsistent with these laws of nature, then that cannot be real. That cannot happen. So we need to have, as you mentioned earlier, Gregory, this intuition to pick, to sense, really, is this right? Does that make sense? Or no, it doesn't make sense. So we have to have some sort of alertness and aliveness to sort of weigh something that comes across our path, not just accept, oh, this is the belief, this is the teaching, and it's really 100% true, and so everything is right, to just accept it and to follow it. No, we must act, and as an individual who sees things and weighs everything, every step that we take. So yes, thank you very much for that, Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio 1. This is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And if you're interested in finding out more about the Grail message or get a copy of the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is salvation, redemption. Is to sort of join in with the Christmas season. So is salvation, redemption. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. And if you're outside of the UK, you can contact us on the same number, but it has to have a few extra digits in the front. So that is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are also broadcasting, just the website we're broadcasting is blessradio1.com. That's the number one, blessradio1, the number one.com. Also on YouTube, just go to youtube.com, type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, the number one, Bless Radio 1, space live stream. That's when they have the live show. And if you're listening, and then 24 hours later, the next day, basically, you can hear the recording of the show on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, the number one, then space, Grail message, Grail, space message, MESSAGE, and then space the name of the show, the topic of the show, which tonight is salvation, redemption. Now, Gregory, I want to look at when we've been talking about this journey, and we talked about this map, and then, of course, you can get lost, as you mentioned, also even trapped or injured, on our journey. So let's look at that, the consequences of such things, getting lost. Now, when we say getting lost, it can be, you don't think of it as a deliberate action. You think of it as, I don't believe anybody would intentionally be getting lost. You never think of that as a first meaning of that. So, Gregory, let's think about that. So, we mentioned earlier that we have the natural, you could say, talents. Of course, we know on the earth we have the five senses, and then we have the intuition as a, you could say, a spiritual ability to sense beyond the earthly, you could say, pick up non-earthly things. So, Gregory, when we get lost, does that mean one of the abilities is not working?
Most of the time, when you have a people or a personality is lost, that only comes about when that personality is unable to find its bearing. When you're unable to find your bearing, it means you are lost. You remain in the same place. The question one should now ask, what sort of triggers that lostness? That means one is unable to find one's bearing in order to proceed aright. If one looks very carefully, as was given to some personality like Moses, it was made very clear that just as you are striving to come to final recognition, you are striving for happiness, striving for purity, striving for pure love, so are also others like you striving after such. And if along the line you strive to deprive them of that which will enhance their nobility, you tie a knot in your path, just as they themselves will tie a knot in their path if they come to either steal or kill. To steal is to take away that which you had not permitted them, for that means of your property. It doesn't have to be material property. It could also be the joys you have in helping others to make progress. If somebody goes around and turns it the other way around, you will not feel happy. So, or if somebody goes and kills another physically, that person ties a knot. If somebody is building a good reputation in supporting others, and another goes and smears it and deadens it through very harsh words or through some activities which is not complementary in supporting the whole, that is also killing. Through such activities, one ties knots in one's path. Then it's as if one is confused, doesn't know what to do. In that case, one will have to redeem through one's activities. For the first step is to recognize where one is standing, and also to recognize how you are standing. And that if you are unable to make a step to move you further towards your goal, then it must mean you must have lost your bearing through some past activities. So you have to find your way back through your perception and making amends such that you can move forward. For if you have not sort of redeemed yourself through the right activity, then you cannot move forward or you cannot rise higher. So these are the outworkings of the law, which many religious persons or through some of the religions, they tend to point it out to you such that you will take heed. And again, you will find in the teachings of Christ, it was said, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. And that it didn't stop there. And he said, and lead us not into temptation. By temptation is being drawn along the wrong path, which will make us lose the time, which time would have been better used in improving ourselves.
Thank you so much for that, Gregory, that picture that you painted. You know, immediately I was thinking, you know, on earth we are born as a baby and then grow into a child and then, you know, eventually to an adult. So let's say we need someone to bring us up and to teach. We need to learn. And of course, the one who's teaching, he or she needs to have the understanding and knowledge. You know, otherwise, what will they teach us? As you know, the child that is being brought up. So I'm just wondering now. We haven't covered that so far. You know, we talked everything in a way from the point of view of the adult, that we have these abilities, and then, you know, we have these senses that we can use and apply and, you know, find our way, let's say. And then, but then I keep thinking, how did you get to know about them, and how did you, you know, who taught it to you? So, and you've just mentioned about Christ in the, you know, the Lord's Prayer section of the Lord's Prayer about going wrong or astray. And then, you know, forgiving, that's a very important point. I mean, so many things that are there, actually. It's really hard to pick one or 2 points from it, but I'm just saying, bringing it all out at the moment, just so I can bring a question from that. So my question is, Gregory, yeah, are we learning, this is a question that I never asked earlier. Are we meant to learn as we go, or are we able to, you know, do we need a teaching or some sort of knowledge to sort of guide us as well? So is it only learning just by sort of discovering, or will we have to have a teaching guiding us as well?
Hello, thanks for the questions. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. As you will rightly observe, you will find that instead of using the expression learning, one should replace it with the expression experiencing. It means in living through a particular scenario, these expressions, whatever experience you've gone through, has a strong impression on the soul. And only through that which has been experienced thoroughly, through one's intuition, only that we get to the soul and make an impact. In doing that, one comes to know certain things very carefully. If, however, along the line, that experience is not used in the way it's supposed to be, before too long, you lose your awareness of that particular experience. For instance, in the past, say in the times of the Greeks, of the Romans, the Teutons, they were able, through their intuition, through their lives on it, to experience the inner workings of nature. It became very clear to them. It became personal, firm experience through which they could build upon in a step-by-step manner. They were able to see those beings who are responsible for the maintenance of nature, the maintenance of the forms in nature, the maintenance of not only nature or of things which we can see with our physical eyes, but some other forms, some other features of nature which we cannot perceive with our physical eye. Their inner being opened. And because they had that and they had experienced it, there were others who they could not see physically, who advised them. And through this experience, they became very cautious. They were able now to know how to do certain things which before too long they could now bring it in an earthly fashion. They would not pass through certain paths when these other beings warned them not to pass through certain paths. For there are other beings who are at work in nature. That was how it was. But if along the line you do not make use of such knowledge vigorously, before long you will forget, for whatever you don't use. Before long you find that you lose the ability on how to use because you've forgotten it. And as time went on, as these cultures were maturing, which is found in every place, one is not referring to intellectual maturity, because one can make spear to kill another one. That is not maturity. All right, or one can learn to cheat other people. That one is not referred to as maturity, as willed in the laws of in the creation laws. As they matured, these cultures as they matured, be it in Africa, in Asia, or any part of the world, they were able to perceive the existence of higher forces, which they gave names. The same higher forces which the Greeks saw, or the Romans saw, or perceived, or the Germanic tribes saw, or even the tribes of the so-called Red Indian, they perceived all this, the vastness of these forces, and they respected the vastness. That was progress. Just as a child will go to school and learn to speak the language first of its parents, bit by bit, and then says goes to school, and in interaction with others speaks the general language. It doesn't mean that that child is already a poet, but it means it's learning to adjust itself to the language which is necessary for it to live in harmony such that they can express themselves and learn from others. In that fashion, the human spirit grew, matured. They have always been teachers, which teachers, to some extent, they start from one's parents or to those people within the community who are more matured. We're able to learn from this. So, in general, one is meant using one's intuition to learn of the features of the forces and of the processes in nature. And when one refers to nature, it's not the small forest that you see. There are the small to it, but gradually one builds up. And as one has mentioned, creation or nature becomes the teacher, for things are placed in a step-by-step manner for you to absorb and learn. Or when one uses the word learn, that means to absorb it, let it get to your inner self, whether it be through joy or through sorrow. You will remember that anytime you have to go through sorrow, you scarcely forget it because it was unpleasant and you don't want to go through that fashion and that particular part again. If you look very carefully, the idea of pointers, there is always a pointer which directs you through one's experience such that one improves.
Thank you again, Gregory, for your answer there. Again, a very sort of widening the discussion so far. We entered another, let's say, angle there about nature, which maybe people hadn't thought about that, about nature beings that you've mentioned there, which was known in the olden days, you can say, but maybe today is mostly forgotten now. Nobody seems to believe in it anymore. So yes, it just shows the journey, Gregory, again. The map, we mentioned the map at the beginning. We looked at this journey. It's a long, long journey. And I will say most of us wouldn't even think about that, what that journey is. So thank you for bringing that, you could say the journey of humanity even. So yes, thank you for that. Now we've talked about getting lost, Gregory, and I'm thinking, what happens when you are lost? You need help. So we've talked about the teachers, Jesus as an example, we could say. Of course, there are many teachers. What I want to ask about there, you've talked about experiencing and learning, and which is, let's say, and there's a joy and sorrow, all emotional things involved. But on this earth, we are, let's say, many people are experiencing quite some suffering, especially now in these pandemic times, with the economic, health, it's a multi-social situation for many people. It's quite tough times for them. And I'm thinking that people want some sort of help. You could say salvation, or I don't know exactly about redemption, but salvation. And I'm thinking here at the moment, Gregory, of the earthly situation. So are we when we are in this earthly desperation situation, as people are experiencing that, should we be asking for help for the earthly situation, or should we be looking for the bigger goal, which you've talked about, happiness, freedom, which is like a, let's say, spiritual longing? So my question is, Gregory, when we are in this desperate situation on the earth, are we supposed to ask for help, for the earthly situation, or for the sort of the greater goal of humanity, you could say?
First, one must separate earthly activities, earthly help, from spiritual help. The earthly help that is referred to, one must consider very carefully that the rules which have been set up here on earth is such that it conditions how one will have to live with one's neighbors. Some of these conditioning are wrong, some of them are right. Those that are right are the ones that seek to ennoble the human personality. The ones that are wrong are those that seek to bring down humanity. Depending on the countries, certain helps have been put in place. There are other countries that no help has been put in place at all. Whatever the situation, in the scenario where help is put in place in an earthly manner, that brings joy. But one has to be careful, because in many scenarios, once there is joy, one starts sleeping. In the other case, where there is sorrow because of lack of certain things, that's also help in the spiritual sense, because the personality now search in other direction and ensures that it is always awake, is in perpetual awakeness to ensure that what it needs to be able to survive here on earth, it can easily acquire it, preserve it, and moves forward. So no matter the situation, be it joy or sorrow, this knock at the soul of the personality to ensure it's always awake, to ensure it's able to overcome challenges. You do not know what the challenges, what tomorrow may bring, because you're not very sure. You can't see the threads you have spun. But one thing is for sure, you can always prepare. Prepare based on your experiences, such that when these challenges come your way, to a large extent, you would, to a large extent, know how to respond to these challenges such that they will not make one incapacitated. So alertness is one of the keys, be it joy or be it sorrow. One needs to behave like a child in these instances, in these scenarios. A child who is learning to walk may from time to time fall, but does not stop and say, oh, because I have fallen when I stood, I will not rise again. The child picks up itself and try again and again. This is where persistent, patience and persistence pays on the long run.
Thank you for that, Gregory. A really lovely picture you've painted there. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio 1, the number 1. We're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. This is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrusheen. If you are interested in getting a copy of the Grail message or want to have some more information on the Grail message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing in our show tonight is salvation, redemption. Salvation, redemption. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And just to add, we're also broadcasting on youtube.com. Just search for live, listening to us live, you can go to youtube.com and put in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1, Bless Radio 1, space live stream. And if you want to listen to the recording of the show, you can listen to the next day, the recording on the next day on YouTube, and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1, Bless Radio 1, space Grail message, Grail message, MESSAGE, and then space the topic of the show, which is salvation, redemption, salvation, redemption. Gregory, so far, we talked so many things here, getting lost and, and how to get out, find a way out. And so far we've been, let's say the help we've been talking about is using our ability, the intuition. And, but I'm thinking that's all doing things on our own. Or let's say the people immediately around us, our fellow human beings. And also we did mention the teachings as well. But I'm wondering, Gregory, do we also need like even additional help? Because you mentioned there the creation laws, and obviously if there's a creation laws, we're assuming there must be a creator. And so my question is, Gregory, do we also need the help from the creator himself or herself, if we can put it that way? Do we also need help of that? Because, yeah.
Since we mentioned creation laws, that creation only came into existence through the love and the will of the Creator. The love and the will of the Creator and the opportunities that it grants, that alone is utmost help. What is then left is through examples, through how these laws can assist man to sever those things that hold him. As long as the human personality is prepared or strives to follow these laws in accordance with the will of him who put it in place, then it will arrive at its destination. Many wish to make the help from the will conditional on how they themselves wish to see it. That is utterly wrong. It is man who has to adjust himself. Whenever man engages in an activity, there will be responses, which responses will either make him feel joyful, rise higher, or sink. Or the other third possibility is remain on the same spot without making any progress. So the key thing is how that help is viewed. That help is viewed by some as someone coming to give examples or someone coming to do the teaching. But even then, even if he who placed the help in, put the help in creation comes to teach each personality on earth, if the personality does not make use of this help for himself or herself, if they don't use it vigorously, they cannot make any progress. You must consider that when you have a parent who wish to teach you their language, if you do not respond or you refuse to learn the language, then the help is useless. In the case of creation, if you don't understand the language of creation, which is taught to you through experiences, which sometimes is brought to you by those who have put this help or these laws in place, if you yourself refuse to make use of it, then it will be of no benefit.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I know there are people out there who are like strong believers in, let's say, Christianity, and they say, oh, the only way to be saved is to sort of accept Jesus as the Savior, and he only, whatever sin. I know we haven't talked so much on sin, but we've talked around it and a little bit. So, he's the only one who can sort of take away the sin that we carry. So it looks like, but so far the way we have been talking here, Gregory, is like it's in our own hands, you could say, our salvation. So that seems, as I say, in conflict with what these Christians are believing, that Jesus came even to die to remove our sin. So can you please clarify that? Is that correct, what these Christians are believing, that Jesus came to die and take away our sin?
To understand that right, one only needs to use what Jesus himself taught. that whatever a man or a personality has sown, that is what he or she must reap. He did not say may, he said must reap. So Jesus cannot force you to follow the path which he points out to each one. We talked about a point and pointers. The teachings are pointers to where man should go and become self-conscious. For it is man himself who needs to be self-conscious. Therefore, if a man, through his activity, has lost his way, it is he himself, through his activities. He initiated these activities. So, to come back to the right path, he needs to walk back. He needs to reorientate his views such that there will now be good volition. He doesn't need to say, okay, I have sinned, but I will not change my ways. And Christ is coming to take me to that realm of joy when I myself is filled with moody expression. It doesn't work that way. They themselves must reap that which they have sown. Therefore, Christ cannot take away that which they have sown, because they sow something and they have to reap it. When one sows joy, he reaps joy. Do they want Christ to come and take away their joy? When one sows wickedness, they themselves will have to go through the path of wickedness to recognize that that path which they have followed is wrong, and therefore they have to be the change, not Christ himself that has to be the change. Christ only came to show the path, for it is man that has to change and not Christ. And again, one should not say because many say they believe and they are Christians, and therefore that ends it all. To believe is a step. To make use of what Christ has said, whatever faith one claims to hold, if one does not follow the path, which paths are universal, which paths are in accordance with the will, if those paths are not followed, they cannot arrive at the destination that they wish, or they cannot fulfill the goal of arriving at the destination where they will reap joy. So it is the personality that has to work on itself so that it will not lose its orientation. You do not expect someone, instead of working hard to climb a mountain, sits down and starts sleeping and said Christ is going to carry them from their indolent position to a very high position. If we take the mundane things we do, for instance, playing football, and you have people that have different skills in playing their football. Some may say they are going to spend time in the church or in the mosque reciting certain incantations, that will never make them to know how to kick the ball. So, if you want to be a good footballer, you go out there and keep kicking the ball and keep bending the ball until you score a goal. Full stop. Any other thing will not work. Even if they go and spend all their lives in church and they do not do as Christ has suggested to them, they will not get anywhere, and before long they will perish in such indolence.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory, and explanation. There's one more thing on this point I want to pursue, because these same Christians also say, Jesus declared that I am the way, I am the truth and the way, and no man cometh to the Father but through me, or but by me. So they use that as a way of saying only if you accept Christ and as your Savior, that is the only way you can be saved. So almost like this is the only truth, there's no other truth but to Christ. So how can that, and that somehow seems to exclude other people. So is that correct, what they're trying to do, so yeah, what they're saying, is that interpretation correct?
The interpretation is very narrow. What one should know is the works of Christ, which one may refer to as you will have in the Lord's Prayer. When he gave these pointers, and we kept using the words or the expressions pointers, he says to go back to your origin, the paradise of man, you need to be self-conscious. And the pointers, which are the paths that he has showed you, that is the way to go. So it doesn't mean that only those who call themselves Christians will get there. For those who, through their intuition, follow these pointers, which pointers are universal, you will find that those people will also get there. For in following the paths which he has shown, the currents of creation, which is the movement of all the masses, of all the things, the way it is done, in following these particular paths, one is most likely to arrive home, the paradise of mind, as a self-conscious personality much faster than those who do not have an idea of how to get there. However, it must be stressed that as long as that person has a firm good volition in order to rise, that is the first step. Whereas those who make so much noise, claiming to be Christians in words and not Christians, or not Christ-like in deeds, the path is blocked, for they are indolent, very lazy people, unwilling to work on themselves in order to have clearer concepts. Because the pointers which Christ has put in place point clearly of how one should live his or her life in order to arrive home as quickly as possible.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I have another question about, there are many good people out there. They're not necessarily believing in any teaching or even the Creator. So And does that mean, because you said this is a journey of uh, consciousness or self-consciousness, and so for such people who are, let's say, good people, and they don't believe in any teaching, let's say, but they're out to do good. Are they on this journey? Do they need to recognize like the creator in their journey?
In the first case, one says there are good people. That's good people in what context? Is it the context of fellow human spirits, or in the context of the framework of the laws of creation through which man came into existence? If it's in the context of the laws of creation through which even the human spirit, came into existence at all, then in a step-by-step manner, it will lead the personality to the paradise of man. There, that personality will sense the streaming power from on high and need not ask further questions, for then everything is experienced to him or her. If it is in the context of fellow human spirits, where sometimes you find that in order to look good in the eyes of others, everything is carefully calculated. Not that it swings deep within their spirit, but they just want to be called good. Then you will find that such souls, because that experience which they need, which is supposed to touch the spirit and helps it to mature spiritually, that experience is lacking. And therefore, their being good is of no consequence. Whatever they have done here on earth, they will repeat also on earth. They will have some of the advantages which they seek, but it does not touch the living core. That is the core which is alive, which is of spirit, which in the final analysis needs to journey towards paradise of man. So each personality must be sure of what it craves for or what it longs for.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I now want to read a section from the Grail message. It is exactly the title of our radio show, the topic of our radio show tonight, is Salvation Redemption. So there's a lecture in the Grail message titled Salvation Redemption, and I just want to read the beginning of that one page. You could say the first page for our listeners. Salvation Redemption. How often already have human beings pictured these words wrongly to themselves when they wanted to see in them unconditional help from the light, to the exclusion of the all-holy justice. This implies a total error that is already evident today in everything devised by the human mind. They want to make God into their helpful slave, who is only to be considered in connection with the welfare of insignificant earthmen. Just ask yourselves for once about this. Throw light on your thoughts without extenuation. Delve into them clearly and objectively. Then you will have to confess that your whole thinking has never been attuned other than to the idea that upon your petitions, God should always serve and help you to fulfill your wishes. Of course, you do not speak of it in terms of that would be more according to the nature of your being. But as always, give another name to your false volition, putting on little cloaks of deceptive humility, and only speaking of granting instead of serving. Yet this does not alter the fact that your whole conduct, even when praying, is dominated by evil and cannot be pleasing to God. At last be honest with yourselves for once, and tremble at the recognition of how you have hitherto always stood before your God, stubborn, arrogant, and discontented, hypocritical because of your superficiality, thinking of him only in misery and distress, so that he may help you out of the consequences of your actions. But you have never asked beforehand whether your decisions really were according to his will. What are you men before the omnipotence and the sublimity of the Lord, whom you would have rule over you just as it pleases you? With what presumption you would like to enforce here on earth those laws that come from your narrow way of thinking, and that are not in harmony with the divine laws that he placed in creation. You so often exercise your wrong volition with a cunning and evil-mindedness that is inexcusable before God, harming your neighbors thereby to gain advantages for yourselves, either in money or goods, or to acquire a reputation with those for whom you do it. All this will now fall heavily upon you with the weight of a mountain, for nothing of all your wrongdoing can be cancelled in the law of reciprocal action as having been redeemed, unless you freed yourselves through the change in your volition for what is good. Dear listeners, that was a reading I just read from the lecture Salvation, Redemption from the Grail Message. And the topic tonight was Salvation, Redemption. And if you are interested in getting a copy of the Grail Message or want some more information on the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. We've come to the end of our show tonight, listeners. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. I certainly did find it very, let's say, interesting doesn't really say it. It was like, I would say, very uplifting and enlightening. I would call it that way. So, Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Well, to wish them a good week and hope they will pluck up the courage to examine this work.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So yes, listeners, thank you for joining us again. Hope you found it enlightening, like I said. We'll be back next week, Tuesday as usual, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's just before Christmas Day. Next week is Christmas Day. So yes, hope you can join us. I wish you all a great week. God bless. Take care, everybody. All the best to you.